Good evening. I am calling the meeting of the Williamson County School Board to order. September is a month that the board chair is elected here at Williamson County Schools, and we have items on the agenda prior to the election of the board chair. To start, we will start with a record of attendance. So board members, if you would, please enter your attendance. Mr. King?
12 present, 0 absent.
Thank you. We have 12 present, 0 absent. Next, if you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Now is the time for us to elect our board chair. Nominations do not require of nominations when those nominations are made. The first board member to receive, if I may, I actually have an audio issue. I apologize for that. I'm going to start over. Our audio was not working. Now's the time for election of the board chair. Nominations do not require a second. We will have the board vote on the nominations in the order that the board members are nominated. The first board member to receive 7 or more votes will be board chair for the year. Based on that, once the nominations are made, I will give you an opportunity and then close nominations, and we will have that first vote. So with that, do we have any nominations? Mr. Wimberly.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. I'd like to recommend that we re-elect Nancy Garrett as chair of the board. I think she's done a great job and would like to see her continue doing it for another year.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. We have a nomination for Nancy Garrett. Any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, I close the floor to nominations. Based on that, are we ready to vote? If you would, Mr. King, you have it structured for a yes/no vote. Please vote yes in favor of Ms. Garrett, no again.
Your vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
With that, the motion passes. Ms. Garrett is board chair for this coming year. Those of you in the audience, if you would, we are going to move seats, so give us a few minutes for us to make those movements.
Board members, I thank you so much. It'll be an honor to serve again. We've been through a very difficult year, but no matter how difficult it is, our students and our families and our school employees and our district employees, it's an honor to serve, and it's still worth it to serve everybody. So with that, I will open the nominations for school board vice chair. Again, this does not require a second, just like the other vote. And so I'll open the floor for nominations. You can, yes, Mr. Welch.
I'd like to,
Sorry, just a second. Gotta get used to my duties here. Please go ahead.
I'd like to recommend that we re-elect Casey Haw as our vice chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominees?
I'd like
Yeah.
to nominate Dan Cash.
Okay. All right, and just as we did with the other vote, the first nominee to receive the majority of the votes is the vice chair. Is that correct, Mr. Golden?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll vote in order.
Madam Chair, I'd like to call a point of order. There could be more than two nominees.
Are there any other nominees? Thank you. We will first vote for Casey Haw. Board members, please cast your votes.
So you vote
yes or no, please.
Your vote is 9 yes, 3 no.
Thank you, board members. Mr. Haw, congratulations on being reelected as vice chair and official timekeeper. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
Thank you. I appreciate that, and it's an honor to serve on the board in general, and I do appreciate the vote for serving in this capacity. I don't know that it has to be the timekeeper role necessarily. I would, if anybody wants to vote on that as another measure, they could be a vice chair. I don't know if that's an option, but seriously, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haw. Now we'll move to items of particular public interest. And let me check and see how many speakers we have signed up for tonight. We have 29 speakers signed up to speak. Let me just take a quick glance here. Okay, I'll read out the rules for public comment, and everyone please pay close attention. Public comment is one of several ways that the board hears from constituents. Other avenues include emails, phone calls, and in-person meetings. Per board policy, 30 minutes will be placed on the agenda for the chair to recognize individuals to make comments. So since we have 29 speakers, you'll all get 1 minute tonight. At the discretion of the chair, occasionally the time is extended if we have more than 30 people sign up. Williamson County residents and WCS employees shall have first priority. In the event that time remains, the chair may allow non-residents to speak. All persons addressing the board will state his and her name. They've all provided their addresses via the sign-up sheet and provide the name of the organization or group he or she represents if you're representing a group when you're addressing the board. So when you come up, please say your name and please say what your group affiliation is, if there is one. The board reserves the right to limit the time of any speaker, and the chair has authority to terminate the remarks of any individual who is disruptive or does not adhere to board rules. Business decorum is expected from all attending the meeting. No speaking out or clapping is allowed as a person speaks, including while board members are speaking. Disrupting individuals will be asked to leave on first instance and will be escorted out by a deputy. No signs are allowed in the audience. Thank you, I don't see any. And I'll now call up those who have signed up for public comment in groups of 3. As I said, you have 1 minute to speak, and please be ready once your name is called. And again, our board vice chair, Mr. Haw, is the timekeeper. and we'll let you know when your time is up. If you would like to be escorted out by a deputy, please approach one of the deputies and let he or she know, and they will be happy to assist you. And now I'll call up the first three speakers for tonight: Stephanie Graham, Shelby Rollins, and Brian Russell.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Graham. I know that my daughter is divinely made, that she is a human being worthy of love. Having a gay-straight alliance for children in our schools is a blessing and a place of belonging, that these children can find a safe haven and express who they are, only to be annihilated by the adults that should be an example of shameful. Statistically, those that are spewing hate have at least one person in their life that is not heteronormative. If that is a closeted child of yours, imagine the words coming from your mouth and landing squarely on their hearts. Having strong youth who are proud of who they are and not going to turn your child gay, but it may give a gay, closeted child a safe place to be who they are. I issue a warning to the parents saying hateful things in your home. Your children are listening. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Shelby Rollins.
Last month, Mr. Golden, you admonished this board to make a judgment call about masks. And I actually agree with you, except I think you were addressing the wrong crowd. It is a judgment call for the individual families to make and not this board. As a side note, you recommended masks on my kids while hypocritically not wearing one yourself, as did half of you who voted to mask our kids. Jen, at that meeting, you said parent choice is great until my choice to not mask my kid negatively impacts your family, therefore mask up.
Ma'am, excuse me. I did not read this, but I just want to say we normally don't allow you to call out individual members of the board. But please go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't mention that.
Thank
Now
you.
everybody else knows it.
I would imagine I still have the time that I should
do.
have left.
You
Thank
do.
you. This argument, besides lacking scientific proof, also lacks intellectual and moral standing because it doesn't work in reverse. I cannot choose to not mask my child, but you can choose to mask my child, which, guess what, negatively impacts my family. This is the full stop end to this conversation. All mandates say that I don't get to choose, but the ruling class does. The first week of school, by your own admission, we the people voted by our actions. Over 70% of the student body freely chose not to mask. Ironically, exactly 70% of you chose forced masking on our kids. Elected board members, your civic duty is to listen, represent your district, not vote your conscience. The vote should have been the opposite. And when your terms are up, we the people will vote again at the polls. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Brian Russell.
Hello, thank you. I'm here to talk about sexual grooming. What happened last Friday is very uncalled for. Let me make myself very, very clear. In no way, shape, or form am I homophobic. I love people of all different walks of life. I have friends that are homosexual, so this is not about that. I was outside, I saw signs that say gay is okay. We're not here, that's not why I'm here, that's not what the parents that I'm with are about. We're here to talk about what happened last Friday night. This is inappropriate behavior. This is what is called grooming. Grooming is a predatory process in which a perpetrator gradually gains a person's or organization's trust with the intent to be sexually abusive. The group that she talked about, support groups, are fantastic. That's great. But making out and French kissing on a float in front of our little children from kindergarten to 6th grade, 8th grade, uncalled for. Passing out propaganda about bisexuality, uncalled for. This is not an indoctrination center. Schools are an education center. We need to educate our kids and stop indoctrinating them. This needs to stop, and the principals at those schools who allowed that need to be fired. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Patty Cantor. Our next speakers are Patty Cantor, Jenny Halterman, and Melissa Harris, please. Patty Cantor, Jenny Halterman, and Melissa Harris.
I live in Franklin, Tennessee. Leading children in the wrong direction has a heavy penalty in account to God someday. It's something we all need to keep in mind. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Matthew 18:16. The Gale database has, in the school computers, has pornography embedded in it. School internet filters do not filter pornography in the database. Critical race theory is in the Gale's corporate structure. They are Marxists. Also, I have given reports on the pornography in the school libraries and reports on the Gale database to this school board. And I've heard not back from a single person. Not a one. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jenny Halterman.
Again, mandating masks violates human rights as well as parents' rights. I ask you to uphold those rights and end your mandate that's unlawful. This district has spent $7.5 million on COVID policy, as well as been negligent about quality education. I'll give you several examples. One is a book called Unwind that is assigned to ninth grade that talks about children ages 13 to 18 being sent to organ harvesting camps. The AP Lang book is full of leftist, biased articles. I will no longer recommend any student in this district to take AP Lang because of the content in the textbook that is there now for 10 years because it was just admitted this last year. The Hate You Give was assigned to my ninth grader. It says, guys in their sagging pants grind so close to girls they about need condoms. They shouldn't call this punch, it's straight up liquor. Get back to education. Get away from health mandates.
Our next speaker is
11 books in the library at
Ma'am, your time is up. Our next speaker is Melissa Harris.
Hi, I'm Melissa Harris. Jason, I've had the pleasure of communicating with you via email several times. I appreciate the work that all of you do. All you need to know about the way I was raised is that I was not allowed to watch Ellen after she came out as gay on her sitcom in 1997. I spent over 20 years of my life presenting as a straight married woman, much of that hobnobbing with the fine folks of Brentwood, go Raptors. I identified as bisexual for decades because I felt that was only half as offensive as being a lesbian. And honestly, because I saw how much people like groups that are here tonight compare homosexuals to pedophiles, and I wasn't ready for that fight. When I told my mom I'm gay, she told me she didn't know if she could love me fully because I'm sinful. Now, I'm almost 40, so I don't rely on her for anything, so although it hurt, it didn't limit my daily life. I can only imagine the struggle of depending on your parents fully, wanting desperately to tell them a basic fact about who you are, but knowing you will experience rejection, being told you're a sinner or they can't love you, cutting you off, or being kicked out of your home. This is the world that many gay teens live in, even in 2021, and it's not acceptable to me as a parent or as a human being. Being LGBT is not a culture war or a new phenomenon. It's not an us versus them conversation. Everyone in this room wants to see happy, healthy kids.
Time.
But I implore
Time.
you to continue
Ma'am.
to allow organizations
Ma'am,
that-
time. Thank you. Our next speakers are Ava Martin, Jay Ragsdale, and Heather Bottoms.
May I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ava Martin. I am a junior at Independence High School. I have been in Williamson County all my life, and I'm here to implore you to extend the mask mandate. Do not let go of it, because we need to think of our most vulnerable, our students who have immunocompromisations, those who, for whatever reason, may not have been able to get the vaccine, those who are most at risk for serious infections of COVID. There's many people that find massive violation of their rights, but I say it's a greater violation to ignore those who need us to help them. So please extend the mask mandate. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jay Ragsdale.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jay. I grew up in the Williamson County school systems from elementary to high school. Then I went on and got my master's of social work. And one of the great benefits I had of growing up in the WCS system is there are a lot of great groups I got to be a part of. For me, it was like FCA and meet at the pool and things like that. And it was great to make friends and meet people and connect and feel support. And I just really feel like groups like that are essential to the school process. And I think groups like GSA are essential to the process for students who are in the LGBTQ plus community, for them to feel safe and to feel connected. I have seen firsthand as a social worker and as a student in these schools how we treat LGBTQ plus students. I have seen so much bullying, and it is so important for them to have a group where they can feel safe and they can have friends and they can connect like all of our students should have. That is a fundamental right that I believe as a student of these schools, as a human, and as a social worker that we should cherish and offer to every one of our students. And so I just wanted to come in support of GSA and following that through. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heather Bottoms.
I'm Heather Bottoms. I'm on the board of the Franklin chapter of PFLAG, a national organization of parents, family, and friends of the LGBT community whose mission is education, support, and advocacy. I'm also the mom of 3 children who attended Williamson County schools from kindergarten through high school graduation, 2 of whom are also members of the LGBT community. Through my own work with PFLAG and through my kids and their friends, I've heard too many stories of children attempting suicide, children being kicked out of their homes when they come out, children being rejected by parents and friends and extended family and churches. And when that happens, they come to us at PFLAG to get the support and encouragement and education that they need. A part of what we know works for LGBT kids, we know that they get bullied in greater numbers. We know that they're discriminated against more often than their straight peers. And we know, is my time up?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, so sorry. We need the GSA.
Our next speaker is, let's see, Heather, were you the third person?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Our next speakers are Brett Craig, Dr. Maya Neely, and Angela DeYoung.
Hi, my name is Brett Craig. I'm a dad for liberty. We talk a lot about people's right to express who they are, and I just want to ask the question: do we believe in a parent's right to determine when their child is exposed to certain ideas? You know, issues of politics, issues of identity, sexuality. We don't all agree on all these things, right? So what I would say is, like, let's keep this stuff out of the classroom. We don't have to fight. Let's just leave this stuff in the house where parents make the decision and get back to teaching and doing school. And I promise everybody's going to like each other again. Let's keep this stuff out. That's why what happened last week wasn't right. Parents should know before something like that's going to happen, right? And that sort of a display should not happen in front of kids, kissing like that. I think we can agree on that. Even hetero, too. I'm talking about anybody. Okay? So that would be my thought, guys, is that respecting parents' right to consent to these things and not bringing politics and sexual issues like that into the classroom. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Maya Neely.
My name is Maya Neely, and I'm a pediatrician and mother. COVID-19 transmission remains high in our community, and kids are falling ill and some requiring hospitalization. The opt-out policy currently in place is at direct odds with an effective mask mandate, and I worry that we will continue to have surges of this virus within our community. For all of our children, particularly those belonging to groups at high risk for severe disease, it is the responsibility of all of us to protect one another. And I ask that the school board continue its mask mandate and request that universal masking truly means universal masking, with only medical exemptions. In addition, both contact tracing and clear guidance on when to return to school need to be addressed in clear language, so parents can know when to keep their children home from school and when they can return without risk to others. I also wish to stand as an ally beside children and families of the LGBTQ+ community. In order to flourish as people, all of our children need support and encouragement to grow into their unique selves. We all need to love each other a little bit more. If the past year has not taught us anything else, let it teach us that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Angela DeYoung.
Do I start now?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hello, I'm Angela DeYoung, and I am representing my two children that are currently students at Williamson County High Schools. They are some of the positive attributing students to the student body and the brand of Williamson County education, being honor students and in members of the marching band and varsity sports that represent and really bring people to our community. When they go and perform at this high level of academia and they go to school and they see their peers not wearing masks, even though they're taking their individual responsibility for their own personal health, there is a mental impact that my children are facing as a result of other children not caring enough to care, of where their responsibility ends and the other person's responsibility picks up. When their opportunity presents themselves to be able to achieve and they are faced with their teammate, whether it's a band member or their opponent, that other person who breathes on them threatens their opportunity to be excellent as well.
Thank you.
Please consider that in the mask mandate.
Okay, our next three speakers are John Attard, James Lucente, and Nick Cabacanio. I apologize if I mispronounce your names.
My name is John Attard. Yesterday, I lost my beautiful niece when she took her own life due to depression. We have provided this board with scientific information on the fact that masks do not work, and on the negative consequences of mask wearing both medically and psychologically, all of which we have shamefully dismissed with admittedly no expertise to do so and declaring a lack of time and resources in this crucial matter. I quote a member of your board, "District staff is in the business of educating students rather than pretending to be public health experts and giving opinions on subjects they are not qualified to speak to, like the efficacy of different models of masks. Your entire WS COVID team does not have the necessary expertise for viral mitigation. You will no longer ignore the negative consequences of masking our children for political gain. Your business is educating students. We will be holding you all individually accountable, and you are on notice, as is anyone that supports mask mandates. This is about protecting our children."
Hey, my name is James Lucente from Choice Wilco, and my wife and I have a son in kindergarten. All of you swore an oath, and I quote, "I will refrain from using my position on the school board for personal or partisan gain." You guys are all worried about head count concerns and that's not acting in the best interest of families. They are in the best interest of your budgets. The absences that you are worried about happening will be no greater than they are during the normal flu season. And if that's what you're basing your vote on, you're wrong. You're going against your oath. You have so many mitigation strategies in place, you have no idea which is working. So let's remove the one that's easiest to track. Opt-out is easily 80%. It may not look like that on your books, but if you visit any campus, you'll see this. Almost no one is wearing a mask. Cases are down week after week by your own weekly reports. Get rid of the mandate. Make it a choice for the parents. Don't wear a mask, but it has to be the parent's choice or you've failed and you will never get reelected. Thank you.
Nick Cabianco.
1 second, my phone is being weird. My name is Nick, and I'm a member of Centennial High School's Gay Straight Alliance. This group has done wonders for me, not only for me, but for the other people in. There are dozens of students here, and I began attending this group around January 2020, which was about midway through my freshman year. I just moved to Tennessee, and I knew absolutely no one. And as someone who came from up north down south, I can say that moving down south and being a member of the LGBTQ community feels like a death sentence. And I think a lot of you here probably feel very similar. Many households are not accepting of children who identify as LGBTQ. According to youth.gov, 20 to 40% of the homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. These students need a safe place to go. Not many of them feel safe or supported at home, so they come to this club to feel welcome and accepted. We come to school not only to learn, but to feel supported by a community, and this club has done nothing but build said community. We should be allowed to post flyers around the school about our club, or to express ourselves via a homecoming float, and most of all, we should be allowed to exist without the judgment of our peers and without harassment. We are equal, and we are asking to be treated as such. Thank you.
Time. Our next speakers are Doug Leitschutter, excuse me, Ray Dawn Bennett, and Spencer List. Feel free to correct my pronunciation when you come up.
My name is Doug Lecklider. I'm from Franklin. As a father of 3 students in the school system, as well as a parent of a gay family, I'm here to strongly encourage the board to withstand pressure to prohibit the formation or continuation of gay-straight alliance groups within the WCS middle and high schools. These GSA groups are needed to support our children, as many of them navigate sensitive times in their development. Given that suicide attempts have been shown to be 5 times higher among LGBTQ youth as compared to other teens, GSA groups provide a critical lifeline and needed support. I have lived in 6 different states, and I would like to point out that GSAs have existed across this country for over 30 years. They are no different than the myriad dozens of clubs that already exist within each of our schools. As a final comment, I would also ask the board to extend the mask mandate, as data shows it is keeping COVID spread at manageable levels and keeping our kids in school. Thank you.
Reverend Dawn Bennett. Okay. I thought you were a Southern double first name.
I might be. Good evening. My name is Reverend Dawn Bennett. I serve as the pastor at the table in Nashville. From 1996 to 2012, I was a resident of Williamson County. I raised my family here, and all 3 of my children were educated in elementary, middle, and high school here in Williamson County. Back then, there was no advocacy, there was no GSA, but there were, however, LGBTQ students. It's my belief that Williamson County aims for nothing but the best for their students. LGBTQ students very much need the support of their parents, their educators, and their community at large, as health and wellness solely rely on the support of the county. Nashville has a GSA in every single high school, and it's because we have discovered that students need this opportunity to support one another, because clubs provide support, and also for not just for students but for faculty, because a well-adjusted student is a supported student. Mental health and well-being is paramount to a child's ability to develop whole person wellness, which contributes positively to their education and their ability to go on to second education.
Time. Our next speaker is Spencer List.
Just whenever.
Sure.
All right. Afternoon, I'm Spencer List. I'm a sophomore at Independence High School, and I'm the president and founder of Indie Pride, the GSA that many people are coming here to talk about. I want to set the record straight. On Saturday, September 18th, a group that goes by the name of Moms for Liberty, Williamson County, Tennessee, made a post on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook denouncing the participation of my club in the Independence High School homecoming parade. The group claimed that in their post that Thompson Station Elementary and middle school children were also handed bi-week cards as recruitment. These cards were only handed to IHS students, and Indie Pride is a club, not a part of the curriculum. Indie Pride is not inherently sexual. I told you all that I wouldn't make it to the meeting today because I was afraid for my own safety. But I realize it's important for me to be here to back up all the people who are too afraid to speak for themselves. So many students are not able to come out because of their parents and the way that they live at home. Indy Pride is needed at Independence, and I urge you all to remember that. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Mia Elias, Kate Graham, and Corey Martin.
Hello, my name is Mia Elias. I am a part of Indy Pride, and I was on the float that everybody knows about already. And I am here to denounce the rumors. I'm here to speak in or for every student who has to go home to their parents and be afraid because they are who they are. And I am lucky myself to have a parent who appreciates me and loves me no matter what. But I cannot imagine what these students go through. And to have a community at school for our people is very important. And I hope that we can keep this here because I have many friends who fear for their safety. And this is the one place where we are safe. And I thank you guys. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kate Graham.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I'm a senior at Centennial, and I frequently attend the Gay Straight Alliance at my school. I started going there because I wanted to feel supported and be part of a community with a background like my own. However, the group also includes straight students who support LGBTQ+ community. We need groups like this because people like me need a place where they can be themselves. GSA is inherently a safe place. I'm a member of the Mormon Church, and they have not always been the most welcoming of people to me. People like me. Now at GSA every Wednesday, I'm given a place where I feel safe and can be authentically me. I stand in solidarity with Indy High School's Pride Club and all the other Pride Clubs in the county, and nothing will change that. Thank you.
Corey Martin.
Hello, I'm Corey Martin. I'm here to support the extension of the mask mandate, and I'd like to echo the words of the doctor who encouraged a universal mask mandate with only medical exemptions. Also, I'm deeply despaired by my neighbors who have decided that it's politically expedient to risk my daughter's health to further their brand and ambitions by bullying. My neighbors have made it clear that they care more about going viral, pun intended, than they do about having civil discourse. As the dad of a kindergartner, I understand that I have agreed to participate in a society that requires cooperations with other parents, but it would be nice if we were all pulling in the same direction. And I understand that some of this is out of your control, but the message that you put forth carries a lot of weight. So I support you in what you can do to protect my daughter's health and that of her classmates. I'm praying peace, wisdom, and rest for each one of you. Thank you for serving our community.
Our next three speakers are Robin Steenman, Matt Hall, and Justin Canoe.
Good evening, Robin Steenman, District 12. It's not about LGBTQ rights. It's not about GSA clubs. It never was. It's about what is appropriate in the school environment. It's about the sexualization of our children. It's mostly about what is appropriate to present to elementary age children. It's about the enforcement across the board of the student code of conduct. Had there been an adult in the room to enforce the code, no one would be talking about the parade floats at tonight's school board meeting. It's a failure of leadership. Leadership begins at the top. When parents alerted Mr. Golden, his response cited federal code and not a single concern over what actually happened. That's not leadership. The same leadership vacuum apparently exists at Independence High School, to the detriment of WCS and to the trust that parents have in it. The majority of parents that they just want you to teach their children reading, writing, and math in a safe environment in partnership with them.
Our next speaker is Matt Hull.
Parker Hill, where am I here? Matthew Parker Hill, thank you. I am a product of Williamson County Schools, was the last class at Northside Junior High. Go Vikings. Graduated from Franklin High in '85. Go Admirals. Why do I say that? Because things change. I was born and raised here. I get to speak here. I had a lady look at my kilt. She said, I don't get to live here. Why? Because I have a kilt and I have painted nails. Parents are asking, when is it appropriate to wait and tell their kids how the world works? We're talking about decided case law. We're not talking about whims. Sooner or later, someone's going to have to go to work and obey these rules. Being gay is not like COVID. You cannot catch it, people. Oh, dear Lord, y'all are worried about this stuff when how many of you know that 90% of your 12-year-old boys are going home and watching porn for hours, especially the church kids. God's making gays, straight kids, cats, trans kids right now. The horses are out of the barn, and y'all can't do anything about it. It only hurts when you argue against reality. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Justin Canoe.
Amen. We've had one of the worst outbreaks in the country. Nearly 20 public school employees have died of the disease just this year, so I hope you're planning to extend the mask mandate, even if it is mostly symbolic thanks to Lee's overreaching opt-out order. But the main point I want to make is that words have meaning. The word liberty means the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. And I'd ask the people with that word on their shirts behind me, if you truly are supporters of liberty, does that not extend to the freedom to love who we want to love? And if so, does calling for your people to come here and persecute LGBTQ kids for the crime of letting the world know they exist and showing love for one another not fly in the face of what you claim to stand for? That video was not a French kiss. It was a quick peck that I had to watch 3 times to catch. And if it was a boy and a girl, there's zero chance anyone would have cared. Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers are Jeff Price, Jen Baker, and Gina Camillo.
Jeff Price, Spring Hill, representing my family here, 2 kids that go to school. Heard from my daughter the other day about the parade. You know, young children like that shouldn't have to be forced to, whatever was going on there, be forced upon them. Let the parents make that decision. I respect everybody, and I teach my kids to respect everybody. I have lots of gay friends. I love them. I have no problems with that at all. But that does not belong in our schools, especially a parade. There should have been some notification at that point in time to let parents know that was going on. And also, I think the mask mandate is ridiculous, and it puts more mental issues with these kids that are coming home, mental and emotional issues that are far worse than COVID will ever be. Thank you.
Jen Baker.
Hi, sorry, thought I was third up. Hi, so this weekend, San Francisco Mayor London Breed spent her Saturday night violating her own indoor mask mandate while partying at a club. She defended her actions by saying, I was feeling the spirit and I wasn't thinking about a mask. And then there were the Emmys, also held in Los Angeles, also maskless. They have the choice, so parents and students need that choice. Isn't it time to just let parents make the decisions that they feel are right for themselves and their children? Not letting children see each other's faces will have a negative effect that you cannot even begin to fathom. So many of those in power feel the need to go without a mask. Why don't we let our kids do that? Please just let kids be kids and let them breathe and smile and see each other's smiles. Those that choose to wear a mask can do so, but they do not need you to make their health care decisions for them. That's their parents' job. Thanks.
Here's our last 3, Gina Camillo, Lars Griffin, I think, and Amy Stevens.
Good evening. I'm Gina Carrillo, a local author.
I'm here to support Franklin Pride, PFLAG, and the LGBT community, for my friends and family that couldn't be here tonight, for my brothers who were bullied all throughout school, for my best friend who was beaten all the time, who would call me crying with stitches on his forehead. I'm here for the kids, to support, show love, and fight for them to be able to be themselves. I'm here to be encouraging and will be their voice. I wrote a poem called Rainbow Connection. Rainbow in the sky, colorful flags raised high. Take a chance with a glance. It's your reflection, it's the rainbow connection. I am who I am, approval isn't needed. I used to think what I wanted was just a pipe dream. Every time I'm cut open, I bleed in different colors. My friendships have gotten me through many rainy days. We take care of each other. Yet I still struggle with darkness versus light. It's not easy as what is false or true. I was lost and now I'm found. Here's what I do. I no longer live for the weekends. You just can't go through life treating yourself like a zero, trying to be someone else's hero. I can go anywhere. I can be anything. Why not go out on a limb? Isn't that where the fruit is? You know, education is the one thing no one can take away from me.
Time.
Thank you for your time and attention. Much love.
Lars Griffin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mars Griffin. I am a student at Ravenwood High School and a member of the Ravenwood High School GSA, or Gender and Sexuality Alliance. At my time at the school, I have seen the way that our club is treated by students, and it is with the same argument of these students that are calling other students slurs in the hallways and things of that sort that adults here are making. It is the same argument that students are making, that we have decided that these students are bullies and are detrimental to the educational and the social and mental health of LGBTQ+ community members in our schools, that I am seeing and hearing adults here making. These are the arguments that are against the Independence High School float, and these are the arguments that are widely accepted by many homophobic and transphobic groups. And I ask you as board members and you as audience members, as parents, as students, as people who may be watching to, I'm sorry for going over time.
Time.
To,
Thank you.
May I finish?
No, Mars, thank you. We give everybody a minute, but thank you so much. The next person is Amy Stevens. And this is our final speaker for the evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your time. Yes, my name is Amy Stevens. I wasn't planning on speaking, but there was a spot, so I decided to go ahead and take a moment. Just to reiterate what one of the other speakers said, I do believe it's time that we get back to the basics within the educational system. Let's get back to math, science, language, reading, all the things our kids need to be productive, successful people in our society. I also think it's time that our parents get back to the place of parenting. So if it's parent education classes that need to be offered, because what I'm hearing quite a bit of is that it's not safe at home. Well, I think we need to start there. We need to make sure that our families are getting what they need to be able to support their kids and whatever that might look like, but parents are being taken out of the mix, and it's just not appropriate any longer. So let the parents who want to stand up for the kids, stand up for the kids, but I don't think all the extra stuff is needed within our school system. If it's after school, fine. Our kids need to be safe, absolutely. But again, parents who aren't wanting their kids to be subject to these things need to have that ability.
Time. Everyone, that concludes our public comment for the evening. I want to thank and commend the audience members on the way that you all treated each other respectfully. That is greatly appreciated. We're now going to take a 10-minute break so that those who want to leave can leave, and we'll resume at, let's see, 7:33. please be seated if you're in the audience. We'll continue with our business items. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Mr. Welch. Board members, please also use your buttons as you can, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mitchell seconds. Is there any discussion? If no discussion, please vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, board members. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? Mr. Mitchell approves. Mr. Fiskus seconds. Is there any discussion? I see no discussion. Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, board members. With the approval of the consent agenda, you've approved the following items. Approval of the August 16th, 2021 school board meeting minutes. Approval of the August 26th, 2021 school board special called meeting minutes. Recommendation for field trip fee requests. Approval of collaborative conferencing team. Approval of the calendar committee membership for the board. The budget timeline. Approval 142 federal budget summaries for ARP IDEA, Part B, and IDEA preschool for grants approved in August. And our next agenda item is communications to the board, and we'll start with the superintendent's report. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first thank the speakers for speaking, especially the students who came in today. And I'm going to jump a little bit from our traditional structure of me presenting the superintendent's report and then doing some student spotlights, because we have additional students who are here, some of our ACT perfect score students, and I would like to ask Carol Birdsong to announce that first, just out of respect for the students and their time, because this is a school day, a school night. So Ms. Birdsong, if you would, and then after that we'll get into to the additional portions of my superintendent's report. Ms. Birdsong.
Thank you, Mr. Golden, and board members. It's been a minute since I've been up here, so I'm excited to be here. We are celebrating tonight some students who earned a perfect ACT composite. Yay. And we are also going to celebrate tonight our 24 reward schools. So a wonderful night to be in Williamson County Schools. We are going to start with perfect ACTs. And Audrey, Mr. Kydell, and Audrey, if I could get you guys to come up first. This is Audrey Alino. So I got to do my clicker. I'm out of practice here. This is Audrey, and Audrey is at Brentwood High School. And Audrey earned her perfect ACT composite score on the June test. So it's been a minute, again, since we've been there. Did y'all get your picture? All right, congrats, Audrey. Now we're going to move over to Independence High School, and this is Ella Wyckoff. So, Dr. Patton and Ella, come on up, please. Board members may remember that we give our perfect ACT students a medal. And then we're going to ask you, Ella, to turn around and take your picture. Get your picture made. Ella made her perfect ACT score on the July test. So congratulations, Ella. And Porter, if you'll come on up, Porter Doge. And Dr. Katie Hill, principal at Page High School. And Dr. if you'll get the medal, please, and give to Porter. Porter scored his perfect ACT composite score during the June test. So everybody get your picture, Porter. Try to get out of it. Did y'all get it? Okay, great. Congratulations. Families, we want to make sure you get your picture because this is quite a celebration. So take all the time you need. All right, we have 3 other students who could not be here tonight, but we do want to celebrate them as well. This is Joshua Liu from Ravenwood High School. He made his score in June. Then we have sisters, Cynthia Shue and Linda Shue, Ravenwood High School as well. They both earned a perfect ACT composite in July. So congratulations to all of our ACT students. Mr. Golden, if I could ask you to please come forward.
And if I may, Ms. Birdsong, I want to first mention that we are about to celebrate 24 Williamson County Schools reward schools. And Carol, I have to say this before I step up. We have 188 statewide schools who actually received this designation. More than 1,700 schools in the state, 24 of those schools are ours, by far the largest number of any district. I am so proud of those who are about to be recognized. That's the top designation for schools, and it really focuses on both achievement and growth based on last year's scores. Last year, what this means for students is that our students grew and performed well, even in that tough year. There was if you all remember, there was a lot going on last year, and I am so proud of our schools. I'm so proud of our students and what these celebrations mean for us. Carol, I had to say that before I got up to say thank you to our principals as you walk through these.
Yes, sir, and I'm glad I did not have all that written down. So I am glad you're able to cover that for us. So I will try to fill just a moment of time as you are coming down. We are going to ask you principals, when we call your name, if you guys will proceed forward and get your plaque from Mr. Golden. So, Bethesda Elementary School, please come forward. Jill Justice is here, principal. Oops, got carried away there. Clovercroft Elementary School, Elizabeth Vest. College Grove Elementary School, Kathy Lillard. Crockett Elementary School, Bronwyn Rector. Grassland Elementary School, Ann Gordon. Hunters Bend Elementary School, Yolanda Blackburn. Jordan Elementary School, Chad Walker. Kenrose Elementary School, Becca Loffey. Lipscomb Elementary School, Michelle Contich. Longview Elementary School, Kathy Ball. Nolensville Elementary School, Amanda Fuller. Oakview Elementary School, Amy Stevenson. Perry Creek Elementary School, Janet Alexandro. Thompson Station Elementary, Robert Bohr. Walnut Grove Elementary School, Kate Donnelly. Westwood Elementary School, Jill Hunt. And finally, in our elementary schools, Winstead Elementary School and Kathy Wells. Now moving on to middle schools. Brentwood Middle School, Teresa Thomas is here. Heritage Middle School, Dana Finch. Sunset Middle School, Clarissa Heyman. Brentwood High School, we're moving to high schools next. Kevin Cadell. Franklin Griffin High School, Shane Pinto. Ravenwood High School, Pam Baden. And last but not least in our high schools, Renaissance High School, and Christine Gupton is here. Congratulations to our 24 reward schools and to our perfect ACT students.
Madam Chair, to continue my superintendent's report, I just want to emphasize we are all about instruction. We are about instruction. And I am so proud of all our schools and all our students and all our parents and what they did last year. We know that this year continues to be a challenging year in ways that just 2 years ago we could have never imagined. But the business of school is happening here in Williamson County. I want to give you one more celebration. This year, we were notified that 72 of our high school seniors were named National Merit Semifinalists. This is the most ever. This is about 20 or so more than the most ever. And the National Merit structure is that they have a limited number of students that they award the National Merit Semifinalist designation nationwide. And you're competing on the PSAT against peers across the nation. This year, we had 72 National Merit Semifinalists in Williamson County Schools. I want to also let you know that there are a total 346 statewide. We have 147 districts, you all. 147 districts in Tennessee. 346 students received this award this year. 72 of them were Williamson County students. That's over 20% of the state total in our one district. Again, congratulations to those students who are named National Merit Semifinalists. In a few months, they will name National Merit Semifinalists. Scholarships will become available. That's what that means for students, that this is a scholarship opportunity for our current seniors based on their unbelievable performance on the PSAT. Those are just a couple of examples of celebrations. And I got to tell you, the celebrations are going to continue as we progress through the course of this school year, because that's what we're about. The effort is there, and we get results from our efforts. I'm so proud of our students and faculty. Do want to give you a quick update on growth. At the end of the first month, we always look to our growth numbers. This year, we grew 1,869 students over the same time last year, end of first month to end of first month. We are currently the largest we have ever been here in Williamson County. 41,980 pre-K through 12th grade students here in Williamson County schools as of the end of the first month. And y'all, we've already had more students come in since we hit that benchmark. We continue to grow. People are coming here for the schools, and I am so proud of the work that our faculty and staff does and did, especially last year, and especially as we're getting this year started, to make sure that we serve our students and serve our students well. I also want to mention to you that our communications department has added a new feature on our website. It's called WCS by the Numbers. It has some of those statistical informational items such as growth and some other issues. If you go to our About Us section of our website and scroll down, WCS by the Numbers can be found there with some information, and that is a living document electronically that we will continue to work on so that members of our community can see our progress and see where we go. Next, I did want to let you know that in addition to academic achievement, we continue to work. We continue to work on improving students' sense of safety at school. You all heard that discussion at public comment, and I want to make sure everyone knows that it is a priority for Williamson County Schools to make every student feel safe. As you hear public comment, it's hard when someone shares their perception of what they've heard on social media, but I want to let you know that our principals and our professionals are dedicated to making sure all our students feel safe. In the particular example that arose over the weekend, we give all students the same access to our excellent educational system. For many decades, WCS has allowed student-led clubs, and that is part of what you heard today, student-led clubs. And you may have noticed some of the students talked about those clubs being student-led clubs. We don't make content decisions on student-led clubs, but we allow students to develop what they need and what they value through those student-led clubs. And we make sure to respect that regardless of content. Again, you all, it's about making sure that all our students feel safe. And we have work to do. I think this discussion tonight made it clear that we still have work to do. One of my goals, one of my draft goals that's on this board's agenda tonight is to continue to grow to help students feel that sense of security and safety in Williamson County Schools. And I want to make sure you know that we continue to be committed to that. Do want to mention briefly COVID. We can't help these days but mention it. It is the next item on the agenda, Madam Chair. And rather than go into any detail, I think it's appropriate for me to close my superintendent's report, at least for this month, and allow us to go on to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. Our next item is the board chair report, and I'll just give a quick report. Several TSBA-related items. The first is our TSBA regional meeting is this Thursday. It's a virtual meeting at 5 p.m., September 23rd. I believe we've all received the link to that. If you haven't, please let me know and I can send it to you. Secondly, our Tennessee School Board Association statewide meeting is the weekend of November 19th, and as we discussed at work session, that's the weekend before Thanksgiving, so plan accordingly. Third, big announcement from TSBA today. This is breaking news. You haven't heard this yet, but I'm very excited to tell you that our Entrepreneur and Innovation Center won the Statewide Excellence in Education Award. Mr. Welch, kudos to Mr. Welch for suggesting it, to nominate it. Jeremy Qualls, our Director of Career and Tech Education, filled out the application, and we were just notified today, and that will be presented at the statewide convention. So congratulations to all those minds that put together the EIC, and look forward to that happy event in November. I also want to let you know that I will go ahead and start planning our board fall retreat because we have a large board and there are lots of schedules to get ahead of. So I'm going to send you an email tomorrow and ask you to kind of think through some tentative dates. We will have another board member by that time, so it's important for us to consider that board member's availability as well. And then finally, I just want to read the results from our board survey again. We did a survey looking at our code of ethics and discussed the things that we did well as a board and discussed the areas where we could improve. So what we thought we did well was to think at all times in terms of students first, to maintain open lines of communication, and to refer all complaints and concerns to the superintendent. The areas where we thought we needed to work together as a board are to represent at all times the entire school community and refuse to represent special interests in partisan politics, making final decisions only after a full discussion at the board meeting, and not putting ourselves as individuals in situations where we might give the appearance of speaking for the board. So these will be inputs for our retreat as well as our board goals that we will talk about a little bit later, or we will vote to approve. So that's it. That's it for the board chair report. Moving forward, we'll move on to new business. The first item is COVID-19 response strategies. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item A1, mask requirement from August 10th, 2021. The special called meeting and amended motion from August 26th, 2021 special called meeting. As I mentioned to you at the work session, I intended to recommend that we continue the mask requirement. I want to mention to you also that this includes the overlay of the governor's opt-out. A few weeks ago, based on those two dates I mentioned, some elementary families elected to exercise that opt-out after the first date. After the second date, when the board voted to extend the mask requirement, a number of families elected to opt out under the governor's opt-out order as well. Currently, about 32% of our families have opted out. We've had a lot of discussions about COVID and where we are. We do see some encouragement from the numbers. I will tell you that I do recommend that you vote to continue the mask requirement with the governor's overlay, and I'm asking that you extend it through January 19th, which is the 2022, which is the day after the board meeting, in essence to give a 3-month window for that. So that's my recommendation, and certainly willing to discuss it if a motion gets on the floor.
So we've heard the staff recommendation. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Welch makes the motion to approve. Is there a second?
He needs to state the motion.
Oh, Mr. Welch. Mr. Welch needs. Mr.
Yes,
Welch, will you?
Mr. Welch, could you state the motion? And if you need Ms. Glenn to read the previous motion into the record, she can.
Motion to approve the recommendation as made by Superintendent Golden. Will that work, Dana?
I need a specific motion.
Gotcha. Motion to extend the mask mandate through January 19th as recommended by Superintendent Golden, with the existing opt-outs in place. Will that work?
And Mr. Welch, if you can clarify who would be subject to that mandate, if it would be students, staff, and visitors?
Yes, which would include students, staff, and visitors. All grade levels. Thank you.
There is a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second. Mr. Hawes seconds. Is there any discussion? Ms. Cleveland.
I'd just like to say, and this is about the superintendents, correct? That's what I'm sorry. The superintendent, what you just recommended?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Just got lost there for a second. Right now, we have a very low number of cases in Williamson County, and it's sad to see how bad Tennessee as a whole is getting. But again, I get overwhelmed when I look at the numbers. But right now, what I do is I look at the individual schools. I always have. And it's not about mask or no mask. It's about how the positive cases or lack of positive cases at each school. Right now, we have 224 positive cases as of September 17th, based on what we report in the health department reports, about, 7 days behind, and 76 staff members. In my district, I have only one school that has 6 positive cases. The rest are below 5 with teachers and students. And therefore, I still need to stand on what I've always believed in, is elementary. I like the idea of elementary schools being masked because they don't have a choice. But again, middle and high school, they have the choices of being vaccinated or going online. And so I still stand by that, and so therefore, I'll be a vote no.
Any other discussion? Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I just feel obligated to say something, and it sounds like we're not going to discuss this a whole lot because everybody knows how the vote is going to go. But it's just frustrating that every time we institute a temporary restriction, that temporary restriction continues to last and last, and it never goes away. So I am definitely not in favor of extending it past 30 days. I wouldn't vote for it to extend it another 30 days, but another 90 days. It just goes to show that there's no rhyme or reason behind the recommendation to have the mandate. It feels good. It feels like we're doing something, even though we have a large number of opt-outs and even a larger number of people who are not wearing their mask in school because it's just hard to enforce. And I think the teachers and principals are largely looking at this and saying it's not something that they want to spend any more time on. So while I appreciate the continuity argument, it's just continuity of more of the same over the last 18 months. And I think Mr. Golden told us, I mean, we know the total number of cases, but even our total absences were not abnormal for the time, and certainly our number of cases are nowhere near what a really bad flu season looks like. And so I'm just speaking for all the people out there who are so frustrated that we continue to put these restrictions that never go away. So I appreciate it.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. My amendment would be that we remove the religious exemption and only allow the Governor Lee's opt-out and medical exemptions. And
Mr. Proper
Okay.
amendment, need a second.
Do we have a second to remove the religious exemptions?
Need a second to get it on the floor.
Mr. Fiskus seconds. We're in discussion about the amendment. I've noted the speakers to the main motion, and we'll get back to you, Mr. Welch and Ms. Emerson. So now we're discussing the amendment to remove the religious exemption. Is there any discussion?
so, Madam Chair, I think I still have the floor following my motion.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Ms. Osbrooks, can you tell me whether we are required to offer a religious exemption to the mask requirements?
So, Mr. Mitchell, if you're asking for a recommendation, I will be happy to do that. We have obviously last year as well as this year honored religious exemptions. It would be my recommendation that we continue to do that. There is federal law as well as Tennessee state law that deals with religious exemptions. Probably the biggest issue that we have is how do I determine whether your religious exemption or your religious tenet or belief, whether or not I find that to be valid. That is what we struggle with with this, how do I determine whether you have a sincerely held religious belief? So from a legal standpoint, I would recommend that we keep both the religious exemptions and the medical exemptions that have already been granted.
So we are still covered by the governor's executive order. So at this point, the religious exemption really has no teeth or value, I guess, at it, since the governor's executive order is really what overlays it all. And so I stand by my amendment.
And so, Mr. Mitchell, you are correct. The governor's executive order number 84 through October 5th, I believe, is still an overlay, and it would be an overlay on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. We're continuing to discuss the amendment. Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I believe over half the folks out here are against a mask mandate. I believe we've stepped on their liberties in certain ways there already. And now we have the audacity to come out and start talking about religious freedoms in the religious exemption. And as Ms. Osbrook did say, who's going to judge this? How much more freedom are we going to step on as a board? How much more control of our lives are we going to give up? That's all I have to say about the religious exemption. But I could go on with the others, but there's other people in line. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Haw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the religious exemptions, one of the things that I was hearing a lot when that started was that people were just filling out a form and they weren't really citing a religious exemption, and I have not been made aware of one that was for a particular religious reason. We heard from a county commissioner who had the impression that was just an opt-out, basically. So I feel like let's clean the slate, have the opt-out, and address it that way. To have something in place that I think people are admittedly not being that they admitted to being disingenuous about in many cases is frustrating, and I'd rather have people have that opportunity to honestly opt out rather than citing a case or a clause that they did not feel was actually correct. So that's where I would be coming from on this.
Mr. Galbraith? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Fiskus, I believe you were next. Mr. Galbraith, you're next.
That's fine.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to speak on the amendment. I too agree that we need to clean this up. We have given the opportunity for medical exemptions, and those are to be created by or approved by medical doctors or doctors of orthopasty. But what we are seeing on social media at the beginning of the year, and also last year, was that there wasn't any kind of specific requirement for someone to claim a religious exemption. And so with this executive order, those folks have that opportunity to exempt out of that space. But there are other school districts across the state who would be under those same federal and state laws, and they've chosen not to allow religious exemptions. Thank you.
Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess we haven't, the reason people were using the religious exemptions and the medical exemptions was that another opt-out form was not given. And so if you would wish to offer an actual opt-out and rather than relying upon the governor's executive order, then there would be no reason for the religious exemption, and then therefore they could do that. I don't wish to question somebody's motives, I'm sure some of them are probably looking at it and taking a stand based on their religious and moral beliefs, which is I believe how the statute is worded. And so based on that, there's a lot of people who could rightfully sign that religious exemption truthfully and honestly. And so I think to say that people are being disingenuous is not our place to say. And but they felt strongly that they did not want their kid wearing a mask, and they were justified in doing so with the religious exemption. Thank you.
Mr. Wimberly.
I guess to me, it seems kind of like a moot point. We have an opt-out per the governor's order. So whether they're religious or health or whatever, the opt-out exists. And at least until a court tells us otherwise, we are subject to that opt-out. So to me, it's just kind of superfluous effort. And I just don't see the whole point in eliminating it.
I see no.
Sure.
Mr. Welch, Ms. Emerson, do you want to speak to the amendment or to the main motion?
How much control are we going to try to take? I mean, that's my concern. We put ourselves in a position of lording and making these judgment calls on all of our people that live in the county that also think and have a right to what they want to do. I don't want to control your decision. I'll control mine, and if you don't like it, so be it. But I just think that we are taking way too much upon ourselves. And it goes against everything I believe in terms of mandating things for you or for you or for you or you or anybody other than myself. I'll take responsibility. I'll join you in your cause, and I believe in freedom and rights and my own ability to state my case, and then if you all don't like it or we vote against it, I've had an opportunity to state what I want to do. I just think that we are asking and taking way too much from the individual that has their own life and their own way of doing things, and I don't want to mandate some of these things that we're mandating for our community, for our people, for my family, for my friends. I don't want to do that, and I don't think it's right. I don't think we have the right to do that. I have my right, but I don't have the right to take anybody else's away. And it makes me very angry that we sit here and we talk about all of these decisions that are not going to affect just me or this board, but my county, my school system, the people that I love and that I've worked hard for as a teacher and as someone on the school board. It's just not right, folks.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you. So, Elliot, I get the frustration with it. When I was a small child and go to Sunday school, and, you'd learn the 10 Commandments, and you'd learn, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Back then, I always thought it was, don't use it as profanity. And it is, and it still is. But as you get older, at least for me, what I think I've come to realize is, using the Lord's name in vain, what it really is the worst portion of that is adults using it to advance their own cause and masking it as religious belief. I think that's the real violation of that commandment, at least as I see it. So I understand that frustration, and of course I've seen the same things that you have, that we all have, messages being passed around of, well, here's just what you say, here's how you fill out the form, and here's how you get out of it, which is obviously false. That said, I can't vote for it and support it based upon what we've heard from our attorneys. We're a body of laws, and we need to follow established laws. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree with them in every way as applied, but that is our charge. And so in lieu of guidance, that there is no repercussion of that, I won't be able to support it for that point, but I do want to say I appreciate your rationale and integrity for bringing this forth.
Ms. Durham?
Enough people are not supporting it that I don't need to talk. Thank you.
Mr. Cash?
Just one simple statement. I just feel with what's coming down the pipeline in vaccinations, they're talking about 5 years to 12 years now. If we remove this religious exemption, it'll come up again whenever people opt out of that, and that's going to be big time. There's going to be a lot of people opting out for religious reasons, and I don't want to remove it from this in lieu of that coming down the line to us next. Thank you.
I see no further discussion, so the amendment is on the floor. The amendment is to eliminate the religious exemption. And Mr. Golden, our staff recommendation is?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may just quickly address a couple of points. We've allowed religious exemptions from the very beginning of this over a year ago. You may recall that we required masks all of last year. I too am concerned about the numbers because we had a few hundred last year and it grew a lot as this school year started. However, what we see from the CDC is a recommendation of a Swiss cheese model with multiple mitigation strategies. What we've seen in these last few weeks is, for whatever reason that we may not be able to pinpoint, we are improving. Based upon that combination and the nature of what a religious exemption means, which includes a compelling government interest, I do not recommend approval at this time of this amendment.
Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 3 yes, 9 no.
Thank you, board members. The next item on the agenda.
We got to go back to the motion.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I've got to. Well, that wouldn't have worked out very well. Pardon me?
I was next to speak towards
Okay.
the original motion.
That's, so we're back to the original motion, and Ms. Glenn, would you please read that? One moment, please. Go ahead.
To extend the mask mandate through January 19th, 2022, to include students of all grade levels, staff, and visitors with the governor's overlay. I'm sorry?
And current opt-outs.
And current opt-outs. Thank you.
Mr. Welch?
Thank you. So in our own self-evaluation, one of the things that we said that we don't do very well as a board is, the statement is, I will not put myself in a situation where I give the appearance of speaking for the entire board. And so there's kind of two statements that were made that I want to address. The first is speaking on behalf of all the teachers and administrators. You know, they're all tired of it. And I'm sorry, I don't know how any of us can do that, just as there are different opinions within the community, within the board, within students themselves. We heard students have different opinions tonight. Teachers and staff certainly have that as well. So that's not a factually correct statement to be able to sort of say, here's what they all think that way. They have varied opinions on it. The other thing that I want to sort of go to is, you know, the statement that there's no rhyme or reason for that date. And Superintendent, I want to invite you to sort of explain the rhyme and reason for that. And then I have a kind of a question about that as well. But if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pause to let you speak.
Sure, thank you. There are a number of reasons for that. Number one, the CDC guidelines include mask as one of the mitigation strategies based on that Swiss cheese model that I mentioned earlier. We don't have the expertise to pinpoint what particular behavior or strategy is working, whether it's at the community level or at the school level. But what we have seen is in the last few weeks, our numbers are slowly improving. That's one item. Our community in the schools went through a pretty significant process of upheaval when the requirement was put in place a few weeks ago. You all remember that. You got emails about it, about the opt-out forms, et cetera. I spoke to our school's success last year. One of the big reasons I'm convinced of our student success is because we did a good job of keeping students on campus as much as we could and minimize the distractions. It's my opinion that it's not wise for us to so quickly change back and potentially float back and forth. January represents the next meeting after the end of the semester. Given that the board put the mask requirement in place a few weeks ago, given that our numbers are slowly improving, given our experience, granted as educators, not as medical professionals, for the purpose of our mission of serving students, it strikes me as wise to leave it in place. And I think with a balance of the opt-out, we've got a structure that's stable and has been working these last few weeks, and I think is wise to continue it. There are other elements, and Mr. Cash actually mentioned one of them. There's a lot of media discussion about when the vaccines are going to become available. I think there will continue to be some other variables that influence this over the course of the next few weeks. And those are things that ultimately we can't predict.
Thank you. So you're talking about stepping on freedoms about this as well. You know, if we're going to go this absolute route, then are we also going to take our school uniforms policy away, how we handle over-the-counter medication? There's literally dozens and dozens of other examples of where we say, here are our guidelines and here are our policies. We, as an elected board, elected by the community, who has this legal authority that has been established by the courts again and again, are setting these guidelines and policies in place. And we've all voted for those and we've all supported them in the past, and it's never come up of, you know, we're stomping on individual rights. So I understand that, you know, while you don't want it in place, I'm just not buying this argument of it's a violation of personal liberty for us to say, here's a mitigation strategy that we want to put in there. And along with that, I've never really heard what is the mitigation strategy you want to replace it with. This is the only big thing that we're doing and have in place for our schools. We're not doing the heavy quarantining that we were before. We don't have, we're back to full in-person, the events, everything else. This is kind of the one thing that we do. And on a very personal note, I'm going to say this. If you want masks off, you really want them, and I really want them as well, for all the adults out there, go get vaccinated. That's not even, how is that controversial? You don't want masks, go get a vaccine if you're an adult, because that's what works. Denmark just got rid of all their mask and everything requirements. Go look at their vaccination levels. San Francisco, the school system there, had no COVID loss, no COVID cases. Vaccination rates were in the 90%. Everyone talks about how we're doing so much better than the state. Our vaccination levels for our students are twice what the state level is. And I'm not advocating for a mandate here, but I am saying that if you don't want it, go get vaccinated. And that we individually, I think we should advocate for it a lot stronger. We've been tiptoeing around it for over a year and a half now. We couldn't even put a resolution saying, you know, we support getting a flu shot in the middle of the COVID epidemic. So if you don't want it, do something about it. Go get vaccinated. Let's get this down because this is about keeping kids safe. Thank you.
Ms. Emerson, do you want to speak to the main motion? No? Okay, thank you. Mr. Wimberly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On Thursday night, we had a nice discussion about KN95 masks. I now have one on. And where are we on that, Mr. Golden? Because, you know, there seemed to be enthusiasm about making those available to students and staff.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. As I mentioned on Thursday night, we've been told that there is a process in place to donate a specific number, 30,000, to us. I'm going to ask Mr. Anderson to speak to that. And I will tell you also, we're in the process of looking at the availability of those. We do have some masks such as I'm wearing that are available to students right now, but the KN95, when you combine the offer of the donation plus the pricing of it, it's something that we're looking into based on that discussion. Mr. Anderson?
We have looked into the KN95. The cost is $1 to $1.25 each, depending on the volume you buy. And if we are providing them, that's basically just say $1 per student. It could be quite extensive costs. They are supposedly the best ones for everyone. So if we're going to actually not get them donated, it's going to be pretty restrictive to the district since there's no budgeted funds for that. We have been led to believe that there's going to be a donation, as Superintendent Golden said. We do not have any further information on that as yet, but we'll keep looking forward to hearing from them. And it was supposed to be around 30,000 masks.
So is there a possible outcome that staff will come back and say, we've looked at this, we think it's a good idea, and it's going to cost us X amount of dollars, and either we have found the money or we need the board to move some money around or something like that? Is that a...
Yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Durham?
What are we going to do when the governor's executive order expires on 10/5? So that's 15 days from now. So that order expires and we have a lot of opt-outs that are not religious or medical.
Well, thank you for that question. Number one, I don't know what the governor is going to do. I will tell you our experience in the past with some of the governor's orders in previous years is that they analyzed the current situation and he made a decision near the termination time for some of his orders. So a possibility is that he extends the order. If he does not, then we do default back to the exemption structure that we had. And so you know, and I suspect that's part of the reason that we had that discussion about religious exemptions, because that does have the potential to default back if the governor does not continue that opt-out.
I mean, is that something that's a nightmare to have to go back and look at, it, assuming that does go away?
We have all those exemptions on record.
Yeah.
So that part of it would be simple and straightforward.
Yeah, but just governance of that, like how would you possibly, as a school, go back and monitor which kids had religious and medical versus the regular opt-out?
Well, we've had that issue for over a year because we allowed those opt-outs from the very beginning. So, like I mentioned earlier, those numbers have increased this year prior to the governor issuing that order. But we do have experience with that.
Okay. Could we extend a non-specific opt-out regardless of the executive order?
I defer to Ms. Osbrooks on that question.
You're on. Hit the wrong button.
You were already on. Here, let me clear you.
There we go. So to answer your question, I would need to look into that. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of a mechanism that would be a opt-out. There would not be a need for a mask mandate if everyone could opt out. What we have obviously traditionally done have been for medical reasons as well as religious exemptions.
If I may add to that, you all may recall that I recommended the requirement for elementary students, and then when we hit the question about secondary students, I did not make a specific recommendation other than for you all to do that. Part of the reason for that was that practical question of if there's an existing opt-out, is there value in requiring it? When you think about that Swiss cheese model, including the recommendation from the CDC that masks be part of this. For us, once that decision was made, we went through that process of the opt-outs. And so we've already gone through that process, and that's part of what I've been talking about, and Mr. Galbraith mentioned the term continuity. That's part of what I've been talking about related to my recommendations here. From a continuity perspective, we have those in place from earlier this year. So I do see the continuity in that in the event that occurs.
I have another question. So have we looked at, or have you guys or Gary looked at having mask mandates only at certain percentages of positive cases, or by school where certain percentages get to a certain, to a certain level?
So we've had many discussions. Those over the last year and a half have been discussed. Ultimately, especially at the secondary level, well, let me step back. At the elementary level, the big reason for our recommendation a month or so ago was the increased numbers and the fact that students at those grades could not get a vaccine, so they were, they had no access to the vaccine. At the secondary level a few weeks ago, the governor's order was in place already when the vote occurred. So in these particular votes these last 2 months, that has not been a driving factor for us for those reasons I just mentioned. Elementary level, no student had access to a vaccine. Secondary level, the governor obviated that as a discussion point for the particular vote just a few weeks ago because everyone could opt out.
Okay. And then my last question is around the actual exemptions that have been filed versus the actual students not wearing masks, because the numbers in the schools are so much higher than 30% or whatever the number is right now of people who are not wearing masks. So really, how well is the mask mandate actually being upheld, given the fact, and the reason I'm asking this is because there's not a lot of capability truly to control this when you're in the building. The numbers do not represent what looks like it's happening actually in the building. 33% or 37 or whatever that is very low. I would venture to say it's probably more like 70, 80% not wearing them.
Well, so number one, we hear some of those stories from folks who aren't in individual classrooms on a regular basis. We do not include a mask requirement for outdoor activities based on the CDC guidelines and the research that indicates that outdoor activities by and large are fine. So those of you who've been to football games, you're probably not going to see it. When you're in the classroom, same issues that we faced last year. The question of teachers reminding people to pull up their masks, et cetera. when we had those exemptions and then others didn't have the exemptions. Those continue to be daily issues, but we went through that in an entire year. It has not been our experience that 30% of our students are wearing a mask. That has not been our experience. What we find is the numbers are more consistent with what we are seeing practically. And I know Dr. Webb is here and can speak to secondary schools. It's an individual thing, with students. Can I say that exactly that number is exactly on point every single day? That a student doesn't, lose their mask or their nose drops below, all those kinds of things that so many of us are familiar with now after last year. Those things happen. But what I do know is that Swiss cheese model of the CDC guidelines are part of the model, and the board voted to require the mask up to this point. And there is some value in that I can't define and pinpoint and isolate because we're not researchers. But we do know what the CDC has recommended. Dr. Webb, if you would speak to your experience at the secondary schools.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Golden and Ms. Durham. I will be honest and share with you, it is a challenge at the secondary level to manage the mask mandate. I'm proud of the way that our administrators and teachers are moving forward and working to ensure that it's enforced to the best of their ability. I agree with you. There are definitely students who, once that check is done to ensure that everyone who doesn't have a mask exemption on file is wearing their mask. As soon as that check is done, there's nothing that would keep that student from going into the hallway and dropping their mask because we can't monitor it every second that the students are in the building. But I will say that our schools are doing to the best of their ability to check to ensure. We certainly have more students who are adhering to the mask requirement now than when we didn't have the requirement, or wearing masks now than when we didn't have the mandate in place. But certainly it is a challenge to continue to monitor the mask participation.
Thanks. Mr. Wimberly.
I think Ms. Durham asked the questions I had on my mind.
Mr. Fiskus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I want to speak to a comment that when there's an opt-out, there really isn't a mandate. I think one of the things that I've heard from parents of kids who became part of the mandate in secondary level was this permission to see others with masks on as well. And so these parents that would send their kids to school and say, hey, we want you to wear a mask. And then they get there and they may feel like they're the only one, and they weren't wearing them at school during the optional time. Those parents have said that their children feel like they have others now that they can be masked with. And so they feel there's a benefit there. In voting for a mandate that's going to mask more students or teachers and so on, as the CDC has said, there's that Swiss cheese effect that's going to help mitigate. And we can't say that it hasn't. This mask mandate hasn't helped. And we're like Mr. Golden said, we're not researchers, so can we say that it has helped? But our numbers are going down. And so that's what I wanted to share with you from the parents that I've heard from.
Mr. Galbraith.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Osbrooks, what's if this goes through and it happens through the January 19th date, what's the process for reconsideration? Would it be just a motion to cancel this, or is there a particular kind of Robert's rules to strike this down before it ends?
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Obviously, under policy, a board member can ask that something be brought back up. So that is an option. In addition, I'm taking your question as if the vote passes, what you're asking is reconsideration from the losing side. Is that what I'm understanding?
Or the prevailing side. Can you tell me what Yeah, what would be, is it, am I understanding if you, that a reconsideration has to be someone from the prevailing side?
From the prevailing side? No, sir. I said from the losing side.
I know, but I guess that's what I was trying to figure out. I thought that reconsideration has to be somebody from the prevailing side.
Mr. Galbraith, that's my understanding of Robert's rules as well.
So if that only someone from the prevailing side could
Bring the motion back up.
Could bring the motion back up. That's what I was wondering. So absent that reconsideration movement, then how else would it get put on the agenda or brought up for discussion?
It would go through policy.
Through policy?
Well, we have a policy that allows people to put things on the agenda, just like we do.
Okay, so it would so literally, so forget about the reconsideration. It would just have to be put on the agenda and then get a motion and a second.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Chair, one other item, and I'm going to use a parallel with the end of this past school year in the summertime. The COVID numbers just almost literally dropped to the floor. I guess that's actually figurative language, right? Dropped to the floor. And we did not come to you with a request to require masks during the summer school program because the numbers were very low. There's that possibility here because we don't know the future. If this drops to almost to those levels, we may very well come back to you quicker than that. Again, it's just unknown.
Thank you.
Mr. Haw.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to call the question, but I think it's a moot point.
Okay. All right, so again, since we've had significant debate, Ms. Glenn, if you'll reread, and then Mr. Golden, if you'll give the staff recommendation.
To extend the mask mandate through January 19th, 2022, to include students of all grade levels, staff, and visitors with the governor's overlay and current opt-outs.
Staff recommendation, Mr. Golden.
I do recommend approval.
Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 8 yes, 4 no.
Thank you, board members. Our next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 sick leave policy proposed amendment, which was deferred at the August 26, 2021 special called meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a motion to amend the proposed policy for staff sick leave by Ms. Apria. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mitchell had seconded it. So this was deferred to today, so it's on the floor.
Ms. Apria?
Yeah, after the discussion at the work session, I'm going to ask to withdraw this amendment as staff will consider other options for sick leave for staff, if that's okay with my second.
I'll withdraw my second as well.
Okay. So the motion and the second were withdrawn. Ms. Osbrooks, is that all we need to do here?
That's all we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Next item are items related to the 2021-22 school board budget. The first is general purpose school funds amendment for safe schools in the amount of sorry, I'm blanking here. Ms. Farmer, let you go ahead.
If I may, Madam Chair, $542,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the moving state funds received from the Safe School grants to the appropriate line items. Do recommend approval.
Do we have a motion to approve? Mr. Wimberly, do we have a second? Ms. Apria makes a second. Is there any discussion? I see no discussion. Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is a general purpose school fund amendment, United Way, in the amount of $36,000.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is moving received United Way grant funds in the amount of $36,000 to other contracted services for tutoring expenses, and I want to specifically thank the United Way and all those who donate to the United Way through their annual campaigns for this. Recommend approval.
Board members, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Mitchell makes the motion. Is there a second? Ms. Apria makes a second. Is there any discussion? Board members, please cast your votes. I see no discussion.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is Education Capital Projects Fund Amendment for Westwood Drainage. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we discussed at the work session, Mr. Samuels and his staff had put in last year's annual capital funding request some work for Westwood for drainage. After doing some additional engineering work, they determined that some additional work was needed and recommend approval for this additional funding to address that expense.
Do we have a motion to approve? Ms. Durham makes the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Fiskus makes the second. Board members, any discussion? I see none. Please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is Education Capital Projects Fund Amendment, the Ravenwood Edition. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we discussed, we know that there have been some increases in construction expenses related to the market and the impact of COVID and growth, et cetera, here. When the Ravenwood building extension came out to bid, it looked to be about 3.5% above the budgeted funds. As a result, we are asking that you vote to move $280,000 from contingency into the building improvement so that we can address that increase in projected expenses. Recommend approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Mitchell, and the second by Mr. Welch. Is there any other discussion? I see no discussion. Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 11 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain.
Thank you. The next item is Education Capital Projects Fund Amendment Split Log Design. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the first of the finance items that ultimately would need to go to the County Commission if you all approved it. This is a request for $2.1 million to start the design work on the split log property, which is behind Jordan Elementary School, to prepare for a new middle school. We do recommend approval of this startup money.
Board members, do we have a motion to approve? Ms. Apria makes the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Galbraith seconds. Is there any discussion, board members? If not, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is Federal Projects Fund, GPS transfer to federal projects. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request to move funds based on generally accepted accounting principles, based on the fundamental standard that the federal funding is reimbursements. This year, we are receiving more federal funding than we typically do, and while many districts might do this on an annual basis, it's extremely unusual for us. But based on the accounting needs, we do ask that you approve this transfer within WCS's budget so that we meet the generally accepted accounting principles prior to receipt of the federal funding. Recommend approval.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Wimberly makes the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Hall makes the second. Board members, any discussion? I see no discussion. Please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda are board policies for first and final reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item, the 4.206 homebound instruction is a proposed change to reflect a change in the State Board of Education rules, specifically allowing homebound instruction for those students who are temporarily quarantined to be actual direct instruction at the school level through our quarantine process. Ms. Osbrooks has explained through the policy committee and the work session that the new state board rule requires a policy for this to be in place. Recommend approval.
Motion to approve. Mr. Cash makes the motion to approve. Ms. Durham makes the second. Board members, any discussion? Then please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is the virtual education program. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a parallel to the previous policy in that the state board rules allow for quarantined students to receive regular direct instruction and still count as present. Likewise, that requires a policy, so we recommend approval of that as well.
Mr. Hall makes the motion to approve. Ms. Apria makes the second. Board members, any discussion? If not, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. Our next item is policy 4.604, credit for prior courses. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an editorial change eliminating U.S. history as an exception to the credit for prior courses based on a change in the state rules. Recommend approval.
Thank you, board members. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Hall makes the motion. Mr. Welch makes the second. Board members, any discussion? If not, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
And board members, all of these fall into the category of first and final reading. Mr. Golden, will you please explain that to the board?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our board policy calls for policies generally to go through two policy meetings and 2 votes. There are some exceptions to that. One is if there's an editorial change, and 2, if it's a compliance issue. So based on that, these 3 policies will become policy immediately upon the board vote, which is now.
So board members, do we have a motion to approve these on first and final reading? Mr. Hall makes the motion. Mr. Welch makes the second. Any further discussion, board members? If not, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an annual agenda item, the adoption and approval of board goals. Board members, you have seen these and we discussed these at our work session on Thursday night. And I have not received any modifications to these goals, and I'll read them out. One is to renew the focus on progress toward our strategic plan goals at each monthly meeting. The second is to develop and agree on best practices for constituent communications. The third is to review and agree on board and superintendent best practices. And the fourth is to continuously improve our efforts to work according to our guiding principles, our code of ethics, our policies, and Robert's Rules of Order. Do we have a motion to approve? Mr. Wimberly makes the motion to approve, and Ms. Cleveland makes the second. Board members, is there any discussion? I see no discussion. Please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. The next item is approval of board parameters school calendar, and this is also an annual agenda item. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the past few years, you've had that opportunity to vote on parameters for the calendar and have elected not to set any parameters, but instead review the proposed calendar when it comes to you. We mentioned this at the work session, and we invited any discussion, and there wasn't. So based upon that, I do recommend that you approve no parameters for the calendar committee to do their work.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Apria makes the motion. Mr. Welch makes the second. Board members, is there any discussion? Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Dr. Webb and the committee. It's been out here a long time advocating for a full week of fall break. So if advocating no parameters means that you continue with the trend that you've started, then I'll happily oblige. So thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Galbraith. I do want to mention that the way the calendar committee was able to structure that to give a full week for students that week was that we have a parent-teacher conference day, the Monday, and a professional development day the day after that, so that we could squeeze that in for students to have a full week off.
Yes.
I see no further discussion. Board members, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, board members. Our next item, a long-awaited item that we've been discussing for a good while, the approval of the special education teacher's assistant pay. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You see the memo there where we are recommending that we raise the floor of the special education teacher's assistants to no less than $15 an hour, up from the low of $13.26, plus a 3% increase to the salary chart for those with 6 years or more experience. I want to emphasize that based on our staffing right now, these numbers project that we will be able to limit our spending to the existing line item for special education teachers assistants. There's actually two lines, one's from federal and one's from general budget. Our hope is that this really helps in retention. Right now, we're between 85 and 88% total staffing based on a combination of the federal funded positions and state. Y'all, with the unemployment rate and with those jobs that our special education teachers are seeing competition for, we need this, especially for this position. I do want to finally mention that there was a question at the work session about total numbers for additional funding. And Ms. Hall, I know you did some research with Ms. Farmer to answer that question. So if you would identify the question and then answer it for our board.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Golden. Yes, the request was that Ms. Farmer and I look at a 13% increase for all of the pay lanes for the special education teacher assistant. We did that. Ms. Farmer did that, and the total cost of that was close to $1.4 million.
So part of what we're doing with this proposal to you is committing this pay increase to next year's budget. And so we will have an additional funding need for this with this year's budget. Based on our review right now, we feel like this is what we can do, and it's a good step towards acknowledging that real effort from our special education teachers assistants. We're not in a position to recommend that additional expense at this time.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve? Ms. Apria makes the motion to approve, and Mr. Mitchell makes the second. Is there any discussion, board members? Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you. Ms. Hall or Ms. Farmer, so 1.4 million would be for everybody. What's the cost of the amendment or the policy as it stated, the increase?
The proposal as it is 411,000. We roughly have 450,000 within that category. I'm sorry. 450,000 is what we have based on the unfilled positions at the moment. And so 411 is what the proposal currently will cost, so we can stay within.
Gotcha. Do you know what the unfilled teacher on the teacher line item, as far as unfilled teacher pay, as far as teachers pay that the positions are not filled? Do we know what that is?
I don't have an exact number on that, but I can tell you with the teachers, it's a little different from the standpoint we are constantly filling those positions. We may lose, but then we fill. So it's not a bank of just unfilled positions sitting out there to be able to pull funding from.
Right. I guess if it would have been nice to know that, because my request would be that we figure out an additional amount that we could pay the teacher, the TAs that have one to, over 1 year, so that they could get something more than the 3%. And that would have been my request, would be that, okay, because obviously we do have some money that we can't spend because teachers haven't been here for this first quarter. And so I'd love to know what that amount is, so that we could use that, convert it to an amount, and then translate it to a pay rate, or just give you an amount instead of 400,000, make it 700,000, and you could create the pay rates based on whatever formula you could come up with.
Thank you for that. I will tell you that there is a bit of an overlay or mitigation of that. We've experienced more growth than we originally projected. We projected 1,016 growth. We have about 1,800. So we do have some open positions because we can't find teachers in particular spots. But we have also hired some. So there is a set off there. We can get that for you. If I may make a suggestion, I think there's some wisdom in reviewing where we are in the next few months, and there may be some room to make some adjustments. We may need to. We try to set a budget, especially with respect to pay, and stick to that budget over the course of the year. But sometimes the market and emergency situations make that a practical impossibility, and that's where we are here. We were that with bus drivers a few years ago. And so I think this deserves some more discussion in the coming months, and we'll work on getting you that information.
Well, I guess my preference, when you look at this, and somebody who's been here for 16 plus years, they're going from 1790 to 1844. It's 54 cents per hour, and it's $90 a month is what they're getting. The new teachers are getting 3 times that, and granted, that's $2,700 over a 10-month period, which is something significant. And I just think we owe it to I don't want us to kind of cut off our nose to spite our face, and we're successful in hiring new teachers, new TAs, and yet we know this from when we hired the bus drivers. A lot of them resented the fact that they could get some benefits and additional pay, and we lost some tenured bus drivers. And so it's going to happen here. People are going to be sick and tired, and it's like, well, great, you want to reward the people who are coming, but you won't reward the people who've been here for years and years and years. And so so I guess my ask I mean, I know we have, I mean, how many, Vicki, how many teachers how many unfilled positions do we have right now?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. We probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20 to 25. But I will tell you, because of the higher student growth, we have had to add more teachers than we had allotted in the PCR. So we're kind of breaking even at this point as far as the budget goes. We've got kind of a plan, to work that out, but we did have to go over. And of course, I understand exactly what you're saying because I've thought about that too. We certainly don't want to ignore those who have been here a long time. I think from my perspective, the point of making the recommendation for the $15 is that just gets us up to what is competitive in the market for an entry-level position. And we do have those 85 openings that's putting a strain on our current TAs and our teachers by not having that coverage.
I've also, I think it's important to mention that one of the discussions we had was the recognition that everyone who works for a school system could use some additional money. And that's a real challenge, and we agonized over that question. Because when you offer some, a group of staff members extra because the market demands it, you do have to answer that question, what about blank position? And the reality, we have that need, everyone has that need. And so it's really difficult for us to single those out. The reason we have is because the special ed teachers assistant numbers are so low to where we've dropped below 90%. We are offering in this proposal a pay increase for everyone over and above the 4% everyone got. There's no end-all be-all. There's no perfect solution. But when we did our math in trying to find an immediate way to address this, this is what we believe is the wisest thing to do. But the market may continue to change. And I don't know, as I mentioned at the work session, I'm not convinced this is going to help in recruiting because of our really low unemployment rate in the community. There's a reason why so many places have banners out for staff. My hope is that those working special education work recognize that we're taking a step towards the market. I don't know where the end can be.
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Golden, what is our metric or goal for this? Do we have something specific that is a target?
Yes, our target is minimum $15 an hour. We set that as a baseline based on what we've seen for some of the hourly jobs.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase my question. That's sending you in a wrong direction. What is your goal? What is this pay raise trying to accomplish? What is the goal with our staffing that we're trying to?
It's trying to accomplish employee retention so they don't leave us for commercial jobs that pay an hourly rate more than us.
So do we have, where I'm trying to get to is a point of analysis of whether this has been successful or not. And so if in a month, if we've discovered that we've only had X number of teaching assistants resign, what are we going to use to determine whether this has been successful or not?
Thank you. We do have a turnover rate that Human Resources has analyzed. So Ms. Hall, if you would speak to that question.
So we've had a turnover rate of about 28%. So it's been very high, and we've been continuing to lose. We've actually hired some, but as we hire them, we're losing them as well. So this effort, over 40% of our TA staff is in that first year, 0 years to 5 years. So this does address a significant percentage of our staff that's in the SPED TA role. So to answer your question about a metric, I would like for us to fill at least half of the vacancies, and part of that would be not losing people, because we are making some hires, but we are losing people, if that makes any sense.
And so you're talking about net vacancies.
We'd like to see a net increase of about 35.
Over what period of time?
Well,
I guess.
Well, I will tell you,
I'll help you out.
my understanding based on the question was by the end of the semester.
Okay, so you feel like 3 months then?
Yes.
You'll know.
Yes.
Okay, so, because my thought was, if the intent is retention, then maybe, and to Jay's point, maybe a end of semester or an end of year bonus payment for people who are still on staff for the full year or for so many months is the carrot to address something like that. But anyway, what I'm wanting, I guess, and asking you and Ms. Hall to do is to come back in a month or 2 months and let us know whether this is trending in the direction that you're wanting it to trend after we've allocated this or not, so we know whether we need to pull a different lever. The other question I guess I have is, last year or a couple of years ago it was bus drivers, now it's TA, where I know we've got challenges with food service staff. We also had, a couple of years ago, we tried to address some of our classified salary schedules. I don't know that we finished that. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you for that. We had a 3-year plan to address classified pay that finished 2 years ago. The market is telling us it's time to do that again.
Mr. Cash is next, but before I turn your microphone on, I just want to remind everybody that our last item on the agenda tonight is a discussion of the superintendent goals, one of which is that pay plan for all employees. Mr. Cash?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Superintendent Golden, did we say we lost 28% of our TAs for
Turnover. We have had 28% turnover in teachers' assistants, and just over the summer, we did have specific losses to commercial jobs, often in the restaurant industry, that we have not typically experienced. So 28% turnover rate in over the course of 1 year, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Hall.
Are there exit interviews done for these folks? I mean, is that what they're saying? It's they're leaving for pay reasons?
Generally speaking, of course, everyone's is a little bit different, but the two major reasons we hear are leaving for better pay and it's hard work. Those are two. There's some other smaller ones that we hear. To answer your question, yes, we do exit interviews. Some of them include, the nature of the hours, the flexibility, school structure, but by and large, the two are pay and it's hard work.
And one other question: are we getting money for growth this year?
Yes, the structure, and that's a Rachel question to the specifics, but yes, we do expect we will be getting funding for growth. That growth pot, if you all recall, has slowly shrunk at the state level over the years, and they tend to fund growth based on a relative growth compared to the rest of the state. So we don't have any specific numbers yet on that, but we do expect that. Ms. Farmer, you may know how much is in the pot. I don't know.
We do not know. We don't know the exact number at this point.
Well, is it possible we use some of that money for what it's intended for?
This is a really good question. Yeah, ultimately, it goes into our total and does address growth. There are some exceptions, with high-cost students for special ed. Some of the federal funding is restricted, but growth money does go into the general fund so that we can address that.
Right, so, yeah, I agree with Elliot, maybe some kind of performance bonus for these folks. That was a real good idea.
Really good thought.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion, board members? If not, then let's move to vote, please.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, board members. The next item on the agenda is the approval of superintendent's goals. And just as a reminder, board, we've been looking at these for the last several months. We've incorporated your feedback, and we discussed the final goals on Thursday night. Mr. Golden.
And thank you, Madam Chair. The two changes from Thursday night is add the word effectively in goal number 1. Present a fiscally sound pay plan to effectively address recent market changes, including classified and certified positions. And then in goal 5, there was a change that we've included from Thursday to eliminate updates to and replace it with improvements. Include improvements on operations support processes and monthly operations report presented at the board's work session. Based on that, I do recommend that you approve this based on the TSBA recommendation, that this count as 80% of my evaluation.
Thank you, board members. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Mitchell, a second. Mr. Cash? Board members, is there any discussion? Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So have we typically done an 80% weighting on your goals as an evaluation in the past?
Short answer is no, but I'm going to add a little bit because I can't ever resist. We haven't really been following all the rules, even in years prior to me becoming superintendent. So that was a product of Ms. Garrett having conversations with TSBA. So Ms. Garrett, it's odd for me to refer to you to speak, but if you would.
Sure. So when we started checking in about the superintendent's goals, we realized that we were supposed to be doing board goals as well. And so that's why we did board goals. And we also realized that there were supposed to be 2 parts of the evaluation. Number 1 is, I forget what they call it, the things that we fill out, is it observable characteristics? And the weighting of those, we have filled those out in past years. The weighting of those is recommended to be 20%. And then the superintendent's specific goals, the weighting is recommended to be 80%. So
thank you for that. Sure. So here's my position on that point. It's not included in the memorandum, so I don't believe that should be an assumption that our approval of the goals is therefore an acknowledgement of what it's going to weight. And that needs to be a separate conversation. And a separate vote, practically, personally, I believe. And so I don't know that from a Roberts standpoint that's an appropriate, that we're at a point to where approving of the goals just automatically means it's a certain weighting with it when it's not annotated in the motion itself.
So don't disagree with that at all. What was discussed at the work session was that the goals would be approved, and the recommendation was that they would have equal weight. There was not.
Thank you.
There was not discussion.
The goals amongst themselves would all have equal weight.
Correct. Not discussion on the 80% versus 20%. That was the recommendation Thursday evening, that you vote to approve 5 goals and that each goal would have the same.
Thank you for that correction, and I appreciate that, and I get that. So if I may modify my recommendation to approve these goals with each goal having equal weight.
And,
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I just want to say that that is what Attorney Osbrooks had recommended, that we do the weighting next month, but, you know, we just got a little bit of ahead of
That was
ourselves.
me.
Yeah.
And that's fine with me, but my point was that it needs to be clear annotation then.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? No. Has someone made the, where are we here? Have we made the motion yet?
Mitchell made the motion.
Okay.
Cash second.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell made the motion, Mr. Cass seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, please cast your votes.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Thank you, board members. One final acknowledgement before we leave is that this is Mr. Fiskus' last meeting. Brad, we thank you so much for your service and for representing District 4 during the past 3 years, and just want to see if you have anything to say. Hold on. Let me turn your mic on. There you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was thinking about this a little while ago. 32 years ago, I began teaching. I know I look very young, so how is that possible? 24 years ago, we moved to Tennessee, and 23 we moved here to Williamson County, and we began investing in our community. And I will say, of all the ways that we've involved, our 2 children have graduated from every level of elementary to middle to high school, and are now successfully in college. And then these last 3 years, an honor to serve this board and on this board with the District 4 people. I'm so proud of the work that we've done and the work that you guys will continue to do, and I'm confident that the County Commission will appoint someone to carry out that term. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.